I was never told I couldn't do something. I was never told I have to do something in this way. My life has always been like, go after what you want. And when you're going after what you want, you're like, I can keep going because I want that thing.
And I built a business I actually like. So it turns out I like showing up in it.
So actually pretty fine. I'm like, just keep going there. So I think it's all of those factors.
Welcome to the Joyous Path to Millions podcast with me, your host, Emily June Wilcox, serial entrepreneur, 7-figure business owner, mindset junkie, creator of the Money Wound Medicine program, devoted mama of 2, and lover of coffee and crystals. My mission is to put more money in the hands of soulpreneurs through healing money wounds, building abundant businesses, and balancing masculine and feminine energy. When we do this, we collectively up-level the frequency of the planet and help usher in new paradigm wealth. Each week, a new episode will air featuring expert advice, live coaching, and guest interviews where we'll dive into honest money conversations and the behind-the-scenes truth of building our aligned fempires. We all deserve a healthy, empowered relationship with money so we can experience more freedom, pleasure, and joy on our joyous path to millions. So get ready and let's dive in.
I am legit obsessed with the interview that I'm going to share with you guys today, and you are going to be too. Like, it is one of those things where we covered so many topics, and it was just truth bomb after truth bomb with so much honesty and just real talk that I absolutely loved it. There were so many things that I wrote down that I want to make sure that I implement in my business, so many aha moments. And this is a cool thing where the internet brought us together. I have been following Shanté Cofield on Instagram for quite some time, like way before I had an online business. And then when I started my Fresh and Makes Money account, I wasn't following anyone because I just started a brand new account and that was that. So then I went years not following her and then somehow got back on her feed. And there were still things about her I remembered from years before because she's done such a great job with her marketing and branding and the way that she shows up. She just has such a unique perspective. And so I just reached out one day like, hey, I have known you for a long time and I would love to have you on the show. And that was that. And now we're probably going to hang out in person because we live really close to each other. And it just was one of those things where we probably could have talked for 2 hours instead of 1. So let me just give you the background before I drop you right into this interview. So Shanté Cofield is a PT, a physical therapist, a doctor of physical therapy turned entrepreneur. Her alter ego or her brand name is the Movement Maestro. She's an international speaker. She is the host of her own podcast, Maestro on the Mic. And that's received over 1 million downloads to date. Like, girlfriend's been around for a while. She's done incredible work. And her company, the Movement Maestro LLC, is a social media-based company that teaches health and fitness professionals how to build profitable online personal brands. She also, as mentioned, lives here in SoCal, very close to me, drives her hyper green Jeep Wrangler, which shows up on her Instagram feed pretty regularly. And her message to everyone is be relentless in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire. So let's jump into this interview. You are not going to want to miss this. Hello, welcome back to the show. I am joined by Shanté Cofield, who is someone that I've been following on Instagram for a number of years, and it's super fun to be able to interview you. Shanté, welcome to the show.
Dude, Emily, thanks for having me. I don't take it lightly whenever someone invites me on and puts me in front of their audience, so thank you. I'm stoked to chat.
Yeah, I'm stoked to chat too. And I, of course, always look at things through the lens of money, but also just entrepreneurship. And I'm so curious about humans and how this all happened. And when I look at you, on paper, it doesn't feel like you should have built what you built. You're a physical therapist by training, a doctor of physical therapy. So went through all the academics, maybe took out some student loans.
Yeah,
and
just a few.
Just a few. And I feel like, although yes, technically many physical therapists are business owners, entrepreneurs in a sense, it's not that mindset. I feel like it's a very trade time for dollars, traditional business. And yet you took that and completely blew it up and made it your own. So I just want to know, like, how did that all happen?
Yeah, I think the biggest, and you nailed it, is that the traditional approach does bring with it, in some regards, a sense, or at least a feeling of safety, because you'll always have a job. And that was really the thinking that I went in with. Like, I always wanted to be in the medical field. I thought I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. I tore my ACL when I was 15. It's a very common story that you'll hear people that are in like the more orthopedic side of physical therapy. They usually hurt themselves some way. ACL is a big one, and then they get exposed to it. So my first exposure to physical therapy was I tore my ACL, went and got surgery, and realized that I really didn't talk to my surgeon that much, only my physical therapist. I talked to my surgeon probably more than anyone else did because he happened to be my basketball coach. But in general, you don't really talk to your surgeon. You're knocked out. And so I was like, I don't know if I want to do this, but people go into physical therapy, and I went into it because there's safety. You will always have a job. Even if the apocalypse comes, you have a trade, you have a skill, and you're like, I can help you. So that's why largely I went into it, for the safety. And then from there, I just use that as the foundation. I am like safety first always. But it was because I am so safety oriented that I realized I need to do something that I have control of, because I could get fired. So I started teaching for this company called Rock Tape. I didn't really like, treating is annoying. People are babies, and I'm like, just do your exercises. Like, my back doesn't hurt. You should do your exercises. I don't want to have to sit here and baby you. So I didn't really like treating, and I found that I loved teaching. Absolutely loved it, and got the opportunity to work for this company called Rock Tape, and really dove in. And I saw very quickly that what happens if I get fired? What happens if the company goes under? What happens if the company gets sold, which it did? And I was like, that's not safe. So I think it's Seth Godin. He has a quote, playing it safe is risky. And so in that traditional safety of I'll work for someone else, I have a steady paycheck, I have predictable quote unquote income, I watched it happen in COVID. I watched people get furloughed who had been with the company for years. And I was like, not safe. Look at that. And maybe 2 years or so before that, before COVID hit, I had started really leaning into, I need to be able to provide for myself outside of this thing, and kind of use the safety net that was there. In this case, it was from Rock Tape. I was making majority of my money from that to build my own brand at the same time, so that I could step away, or if I wanted to step away from Rock Tape or something happened, I'd be okay. So it was largely a journey of trying to create my own safety with things.
That's fascinating to me, because I actually don't know too many entrepreneurs that are like, I went into entrepreneurship because it's safe.
Yeah.
Like, to me, I feel like it's anything but. It's so unpredictable. As you're building it, you don't know how much money you're going to make from one month to the next. You are your sales and marketing team. You are. So if you get sick.
I think that the safety is that I trust myself more than I trust anybody else. And so I don't know if I trust that person to market for me. I don't know if they trust that person to advertise for me. I don't know if I trust that person to deliver the service. I will show up. Unless I get hit by a car, I will show up to the thing that I said I was going to do, and I'm going to make sure that it happens. So in that regard, I think it is, to me, a lot safer. Yes, you nailed it. It's the perfect word. It can be unpredictable. I think that with online business, actually, we can reduce some of that unpredictability by by running the same things over and over again and creating consistency. People are like, I don't want this and want this. And I'm like, maybe do less and do it better and do it over and over again. And then a lot of that unpredictability goes away. But the safety for me is that I trust myself more than anybody else.
Yeah, I love that. And you have built a really strong brand, and to the point where you're wearing your own merch. Other people buy and wear your merch. I know someone who I used to do CrossFit with who owns Movement Maestro merch. Like, you've really built this in some ways like cult following, like a very loyal fan base. And a lot of your content is really teaching physical therapists how to sell and market and how to bring their business online. So I'm really curious, because again, I'm guessing that in physical therapy school, they weren't like, let's teach you about branding and sales and marketing. So did you know that you were good at this stuff, or did you just learn it and then the natural teacher in you wanted to teach it to others?
The latter, where it's you just do things. I firmly believe that people tell you when you're good at something. And so people start saying things, or they start asking you about something, and then you have to take a moment and be like, I guess I have some proficiency in this thing, and let me look at that more. And that's largely what happened with building this brand. Like that, I never set out to build a brand or a business. It's usually the opposite. You talk to most physical therapists, they scare you away from it in school. They're basically like, you're going to be poor forever. And you're like, what? wait a minute, why would you say that? Oh, and that's because a lot of the people who are teaching it are in a traditional model and they're just like dinosaurs and things like that. But I did not set out to build this. I just wanted to share my ideas on social media. I saw Kelly Starrett doing it at the time. I saw Wad Duck doing it at the time. And I was just like, I have something to say. I'll say some stuff and to connect with people. Like online business wasn't as much of a thing then. So it wasn't, I think people have it harder now because they can see other people have done it or they think it should be faster. There was nothing to really compare myself to at the time. So I was just, I'm just going to put content out. And why? Because I want to, not because maybe I'll get a business or anything like that. But I think one of the things that physical therapists and let's call it service-based providers, because I like my audience now it's PTs, chiros, a lot of yoga folks, Pilates people, trainers, things like that. I think that for physical therapists especially, I always say that I will die on the hill that physical therapy is the best first career. And it's because it teaches you how to interact with people, how to relate to people and relate with people. And that, to me, is at the heart of branding, right? To me, branding is how you make people feel. And you are very cognizant of that as a physical therapist. And I think that physical therapy inherently attracts people that like want to help people. You'll hear the story a lot that I said earlier of people thinking they want to be in the medical space and then being like, but I wanted more interaction with my patients or my clients. Or I went into the cash-based model because the insurance model didn't let me have enough time with my client. And these people, they generally want more of that interaction. And so that was me. And so it lent itself to building a brand because the whole thing that I talk about is just show up as a human, relate with other people, give a fuck about what you're doing, care about other people. And suddenly you attract that and you can build that super loyal following.
I love that so much. And I also feel like too, my physical therapist and like my chiropractor, like know more, I feel like, about anatomy and like the connectedness of everything than the doctors.
Yes.
Like
literally what we go to school for.
Yeah.
Not good at marketing it, not good at advertising our knowledge, but that's literally what our expertise is in.
Yeah. And I feel like that could translate well to business also.
Absolutely.
I feel like my thumb is like numb. And then the next thing I know, they're like working on my neck. And I'm like, wait, how? They feel so far apart on the body. And they're like, no.
Nailed it. I think that I really do think that the majority of people that go into physical therapy and really thrive in that space, they have this inherent desire to teach and to educate and to help people get better and to storytell. And so many of these skills that directly translate into business, and it's the marketing of things and it's the customer relations side of things for that person. Some people are like, I just want to deliver this service. And I'm like, you should just do that then. But the skills that you get to practice within this profession, it does, in my opinion, lend itself to a fairly easy transition into the business side of things.
Yeah. My sense from you is that you're a natural visionary. And so like you're seeing the industry a few steps ahead of where it's at currently. Totally. So I'd be really curious, what are you noticing now? And like, where do you think a lot of these traditional in-office service-based businesses, like where are they headed?
I think it depends on who the owner is because everything goes in a cycle, right? So my girl, Emily Reed, she's Seasonal Intentions. Maybe there's an underscore in that, I'm not sure, on Instagram. And she talks about this and she's really comes from like the Ayurveda background and this concept of spirality where it all just spirality and seasonality, it all comes back again. You live here. And so I know that every June, people get upset. And I'm like, every year it's like this, folks, write it down in the calendar. It's going to be gray. Every single May gray, June gloom. It all just comes back. So I see that from the business side of things as well. And there's outside influences that I think contribute to that spirality, whether it's going slower or faster. But we saw COVID come and that pushed people online. And for people that hadn't tried it yet, some people are like, oh, this is actually way more convenient. But what happens on the other end of that is that people are like, I miss in person. I miss being able to actually connect with someone. So I think it's really important for that business owner to say, what do I like doing? What am I really good at doing? And then lean into that. I do not think that people have to be online, but if you're going to run a business, you have to figure out a way to get in front of your people. And if you're like, I don't really like online, I'm like, cool, then you better be doing the most in person. And I think that you can absolutely have a thriving business that way, or vice versa, and be like, I'm all online, I don't do in person, fine as well. So I think that the industry as it relates to in-person versus online will stay as it is. Like people just need to double down on whatever it is that they like doing. But I think the consumer is getting more educated, which is great. We saw that come out of COVID, where people are like, the traditional model maybe isn't working as great for me. So business owners can really lean into that and look to have a more educated consumer. And we might see, and we definitely will see longer sales cycles with that, meaning it takes longer for someone to purchase because they do have more options. They're trying things out on their own. But I do think that there is a market for this that has, especially with COVID, that really pushed the kind of spirality of things. There's a market for people that are like, I want something different. I want to take advantage or take control of my life. I want to take control of my health. And so business owners, whether they're online or in person, can be looking and should be looking into that, whether they're in person, online, whatever.
I love this so much. And one thing I've been feeling into so much with the energy of this new paradigm that we're moving into, where there is like more balanced masculine, feminine energy, is the eradication of obligation.
I like that.
It's especially women. We've done so much for hundreds and hundreds of years through obligation. And so as we like apply it to our businesses and our wealth and like the way that money is coming in, it's like allowing ourselves, and for women, this is actually like a radical act of defiance to be like, you know what? I'm willing to believe that I can make money in the exact way that I want to, and that feels the most exciting and I feel the most lit up about
that. And the thing that's really cool, I love that you brought this up. I love this conversation. It's different than I've had in a lot of podcasts. So one of the things that I've been very fortunate to experience in looking how I look. So if you're listening to this, you don't know how I look, but if you're watching it, then you see how I look. But in looking like this, I have been able to navigate spaces that other like very traditional female presenting people haven't been privy to, and have interactions in a different way. All of the things that I talk about, it comes from a place of me being like, do men have to do this? Because I watch women do it and I'm like, but do men have to do that? So then no, we don't have to do that to succeed. One of the biggest things I see is women will lead with failures. They want to make themselves more relatable. And I'm like, what? And they'll cut themselves down immediately. And I'm like, you can just lead with your expertise. And it's okay. Men don't do that. Then people are like, they're going to think I'm a bitch. I'm like, they're going to think you're a bitch either way. Go make money and be happy.
Yes.
Either way, they're going to think this. So because I do look this, because I have been able to navigate these spaces and have relationships, business partnerships, and just interactions. I don't want to say business partnerships, but business interactions with very masculine men and very like in these different spaces. And I'm like, men don't have to do that. Men don't even think about some of those things that you're saying.
Yeah.
Let's try and lean into this. And I will make it a point. So one of my business partner, Jill Coleman, she's just the best ever. One of the things that I really look to encourage with her is to talk about her success and speak about that, because someone has to do it first and someone has to take the arrows if we're going to change things. And I know people look up to her, and I'm like, listen, I can say all the things, but people who look like you are going to be more willing to listen to you. So I need you to say these things, because exactly what you just said, Emily, of like, yeah, you can make money in a way that lights you up, and you don't have to shit all over yourself. You can go about this and like, hey, I want to do business this way. You can be successful like that. So Jill, having done that and created massive success, I'm like, I need you to share that, because it does carry more weight. So I love that we're talking about this, because it's very true. And I am seeing it, and I'm seeing people step into that big time, and it just lights me up.
Same. I completely agree. And I love what you said about like the way that we look and who relates to us. And I talk about this in my work as a money healer. I'm like, thank God I'm not the only money teacher. Look at me, this like privileged middle-class white girl that grew up with two parents at home, was like never on the street, never had to worry about food on the table. And if you don't resonate with that, it's so fine. And there are lots of people that are teaching money through the lens of a real rags to riches, or like being in a super crisis. That's not my story. And so I'm not going to pretend like it is. And also, I give permission to people who on paper should be millionaires and yet aren't, and feel all kinds of weird ways about money. And it's like, he does too. Oh,
that it's huge. I know that there's a lot of bad stuff going on right now, and there's a lot of bad stuff going on right now, period. But also, I do think that right now is the best time to be alive. We have so much opportunity. You and I are having this discussion on all this technology. It's going to go out to however many people it goes out to. We're doing it from home. We don't have a massive company that we need to go and to make our own market. We can just go on Canva, on our own computer, and do all these things. I'm like, what a time to be alive. Both of us as women in the space, like that's unheard of. I know that there's a lot of bad stuff going on. And also, I do think right now is the best time to be alive. And I'm absolutely going to take advantage of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is like something that you talk about in your content too, like breaking it down to the brass tacks of business. And it's some of it is simple, but I also find that it's almost always the energetics, it's the mind trash, it's the trauma, it's the whatever underneath. Yeah, it's not actually hard to go live. Like it's a click of one button. What's hard about it is, am I willing to be seen? Am I willing to lead with my expertise and my successes, like you were just talking about? Like that's the stuff that feels scary. And there's a lot of unraveling. And I'm so grateful for entrepreneurship. I don't know how you feel, but to me, it's been the fast track of doing all of the inner work.
Totally. I think that, again, going back to physical therapy as the best first career, when you go to physical therapy school, you ideally learn that the nervous system is queen, right? Every single thing we do is to keep us safe. Whether we understand that or believe it or we agree with it, it's the truth. If someone throws something at you, you put your hands up because you're trying to keep yourself safe. We go into the fetal position. Why? Because it's less likely to injure us if we cover our vital organ. Everything we do is to keep ourselves safe. To that end, when we are looking at taking action and doing things, the most important thing that we can work on is actually looking to prove to our nervous system that we're safe. So when we don't do something, it's not that necessarily the action itself is the problem. It's that we are nervous about the outcome, right? It's not jumping that is the scary part, is landing. Right? Can I handle this? Like I could jump as high as I want. Like, oh, but gravity, I'm going to fall on the ground, right? Can we handle the outcome? And business shows you in this kind of titrated way that you can handle the outcome. Because as long as you take these little steps, you're like, I did this thing, I didn't die. I did this thing, I didn't die. And you can learn to trust yourself to handle the outcome. That's why people don't go live. It's not because they're scared about going live. It's they're scared that the outcome is that someone's going to say something mean to them. And they're like, can I survive that? Can I handle that? Online business will expose you to all of the things, especially if you're like, I have this goal, so I got to do this next thing, go to this next thing, and do this next thing. So I totally agree that I like you said, it can be the fast track of handling handling, experiencing, moving through, identifying, learning how to work through all of those things, big time.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about showing up consistently on social media, because I feel like that's been a huge piece of your success.
Huge.
And you also mentioned like spirality and seasonality and being in a woman's body, there's also cyclicality. Yeah. And all of that is true too. And have you gone through phases where you just feel like an introvert, you don't want to show up? Sure. What's been your approach to really being consistent and maybe dedicated or devoted to showing up for yourself and for your business?
Totally. I think it's a few things. One, I'm always I make certain to explain to people or just highlight to people that frequency and consistency aren't the same thing. Yeah. And people hear consistent and they think, I gotta do it every day. And I'm like, I didn't say that. I just said be consistent. That could be once a month for you. I don't know. You get to choose. Like it's based on your own capacity. So the both and of this in terms of my success is that I am good at being consistent and I also have a high capacity for these things that I really enjoy. I enjoy creating. It comes very naturally. I am introverted, which is why I like the online space because I could be like, and done. Bye. Yeah. In person, you're like, awkward. Can I walk away? You're like, ugh. Online, you get to choose. So I have the consistency, but I have the capacity to have a higher frequency, which definitely contributes to perfect storm, contributing to my success. So when I'm coaching people, it's about them determining what is your frequency that's going to allow you to be consistent. Is once a week? Cool. Put the blinders on. I don't care what Emily's doing. You're not Emily. Like I had used Jill earlier. Jill has, I believe, the highest work capacity of anyone I have ever met. That chick launches every day. Her success is not a fluke. Like she can just outwork you. And I think that this ties into, or like my acceptance of this, radical acceptance of this comes from sport. Like sometimes someone's just better than you. And you're like, I worked as hard as I could. And my 110% is their 80%. I'm
Yeah.
not going to cry about it. What am I going to do? They just can do more. All I can do is put my own blinders on. And I think the coolest part about this is that sport is a zero-sum game. Like somebody wins and somebody loses. Online business isn't. Emily can win and I can win. And people need to just, if we can adopt that mindset, we can both win. Okay, what's my capacity? Okay, what's my frequency? What's my consistency look like then? Okay, cool. And then this is my timeline. It cannot be Emily's timeline because I am not Emily. So I think that's what it's been with everything. I haven't had big periods in time where I'm like, oh, I just don't want to do this, because unlike I think many women that are raised and socialized very like female, I was never told I couldn't do something. I was never told I have to do something in this way. My life has always been like, go after what you want. And when you're going after what you want, you're like, I can keep going because I want that thing.
And I built a business I actually like. So it turns out I like showing up in it.
So actually pretty fine. I'm like, just keep going there. So I think it's all of those factors.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I do think the shadow side of online business is that it's really easy to see what everyone else is doing. I just imagine if I was running a brick and mortar business, I'm like, how much time would I spend analyzing what another brick and mortar business is doing?
It would be because there's a friction. There's such a barrier to find out unless you're in some
right, like you know, like spy on them, like sit outside their location on a bench.
Emily's just outside checking off the clients. They have 5 today.
Yeah,
I saw them walk through the door. It's true. It is so true. The downside of social media in so many ways. Circling back to what you had said about the fear that people have about doing things. I was just talking about this with a friend the other day. Social media has a way of making things seem so important, right? If you just like name, let's say, a quote unquote famous person, but let's say that's very niche, I may have no idea who that person is. But for you, you're like, but how do you not know them? They're like everything. Things are only as important as we make them. But objectively, in the grand scheme of things, like you'll die and then the world moves on. Yes, some people will be sad, but like also the world keeps spinning. Social media has this way of just making things seem so important. And you'll see, I watched some of these accounts that like put, they're not even memes, it's not news, but they put up like these like sensational article kind of things. And I'm like, that shit's from 5 years ago that you're talking about. But it has a way, because it's here, it's in front of you, it makes you think that things are so important. This is where it becomes super important. And I love that analogy you just used. If you're trying to run a business, to really put the blinders on and be like, okay, that's going on over there, but what is going on right here? The same way you would do in a brick and mortar, like what is going on right here? Because Instagram, social media would have you think that these other things are so important when in reality, they probably are not, especially not for your own things.
Totally. And I think another hill that I suspect you would die on, or this is like a drum that you beat, is around really niching and making yourself individualized. And so then it's what even is competition? So I would love for you to just riff on that.
Good. So good. I could totally riff on that. So there is a book called, give me a second, it's called, I don't remember, something about Competition Demystified. It's very dry. It's very long. So this is not me recommending it, but my brain.
This is the Cliff Notes version from Shanté, so you don't have to read it.
Don't read it. I read the first half. That's all you got to read if you're not going to read it. So I read this book, part of this book, Competition Demystified. And one of the things they talk about is barriers to entry, right? When we're looking at business from a very traditional model on what makes things succeed, usually what you're going to see is they're going to speak about in-person brick and mortar businesses. And so, yeah, it is helpful to look at kind of trends and what historically has worked and hasn't worked. And you take what serves you, leave the rest. One of the things that we're looking at in business success is creating barriers to entry. Social media has basically none. If you have a phone and internet, you can go online and start posting and creating content. So in order to have your business succeed, what we want to look to do is basically kind of manufacture barriers to entry. And the way that you can do that is exactly what you said, which is niching down however people want to say it. If I am just the person who does this and I'm leaning on my skill set, I'm leaning on my expertise, I'm leaning on my experience, that creates a barrier that somebody else doesn't have or has to overcome rather. So when I look at something like, even like a pregnancy, right? If this is your expertise, your niche as a start, the fact that you have had a kid automatically is a barrier that I'm like, I don't have one. I didn't have a kid. People get so focused on, let me look what everyone else is doing. And, oh, that person has X. And they look so focused on looking at what everyone else has they don't have time to look at their own strengths, their own advantages, and then lean into them so hard. So this wasn't as important, I would say, 10 years ago in the online space because there was less people. So you just do whatever you want. Anyone could succeed. Now that it is so noisy, yes, niching down in the online space is hugely important. And from a business strategy perspective, not a tactical, a strategic perspective, it is because it creates barriers to entry for your quote unquote competitors or other people in the space and helps your customer be like, nah, Emily is the one for me. So I think it's imperative. I will also say that to me, niching down is something that you learn and you lean into as you go. Very rarely do you just start and you're like, this is my niche and this is what I do. And then that's it. You just start in that direction and then you learn your no as you go.
That's so true. And what do you say to the person but I don't want to leave behind all these other customers that I could help if I choose this one niche?
Totally. So my girl, Laura Jean, she's Dietitian Values on Instagram. She has a phenomenal reframe. And it's something along the lines of, instead of looking at niching down as saying no to opportunities, look at it as giving your people something to say yes to. So the reframe there is that, one, the people that you will be the best at helping, the people that you're going to actually want to help, they'll know because you're holding up a sign, I am for you. The people that are really good at listening around the edges, people you're like, but I could help them. The people that are really good at just listening around the edges and they're like, oh, maybe, they'll reach out to you and be like, I know that you said that you work with women 50 and above. I'm 37. I really resonate with your message. Would you be able to help me? And you could be like, yes.
Yeah.
So that's the reframe. I get it. And oftentimes people don't internalize that message until they've been in the space long enough to realize that they have to niche down and that they also want to, because they're like, I'm getting a lot of fish I don't want. And I'm like, yes, because the bait you're using is too general. Let's go over there.
Yeah, that is so true. I've had that happen too, where a potential client has reached out and been like, I don't know if I'm far enough along to work with you because my business isn't that big. And it's like actually really sweet when that happens. And then you feel like you can decide if they're the right client for you or not.
I say this in the least grimy way. People have interesting feelings about power, but what a powerful position to be in, to be like, I can choose whether or not I want to work with this person because I know that I can help them or I can help them. And then I have the opportunity to be like, hey, actually, Sam is a better fit for you and you should go over there. Everyone wins.
Yeah. So I've been doing Pilates pretty religiously for the last 6 or 8 months. And it's been awesome because it's like the first thing I really got into post CrossFit. And CrossFit is like, when you're in it, it's hard to imagine that there's ever going to be like life after CrossFit.
You're in.
You're so in. And so I've like really been enjoying Pilates, and you get different instructors depending on which day that you go. And there's one instructor who like, it's just, she's always talking about our obliques. Like I've never heard someone talk about obliques this much. And so then I think of you, Shanté, and I'm like, dude, Shanté would be all over this. Like she should just branding herself as the oblique queen.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
And
100%.
And I think it's actually so rad that I thought of you because it's so, it can be so difficult on social media and with the algorithms and whatever to cut through and say something enough times that someone actually remembers that it's like your thing that you said. And I feel like there's even been years where you haven't showed up in my feed. So
totally,
some of that is consistency for sure and just longevity. But I also think that your willingness to talk about the same thing over and over again is a little higher than other people's. What is your mindset around that?
Love this question. I do. I think that this is just an inherent, I don't want to say just, but this is part of an inherent advantage that I have. Earlier, you said that I am a visionary, and I will agree, but I am not some like major ideator where I have a million ideas and I want to jump around. I'm like, this is my idea. I will say it for the rest of my life. That's just how my brain works.
With my one really good idea.
Yeah, I'm just like, nothing else is popping into my head. I think there's people that I'll use the word suffer from this, like they have too many ideas and then they're just like shiny object syndrome and they're like, but that thing, and but that thing, and but that thing. That's really difficult. If you're thinking about looking to, Jill calls it the trust barrier. I know I'm using her name a lot. She's my business partner. We talk every day. But if you're thinking about like breaking through a barrier, you will break through a wall faster by hitting the same point over and over again than by trying to hit different points on that wall. You just go after the same thing. Boom, boom. And eventually you break through the trust barrier, and then you can actually go in multiple directions because you're already through. This person, your audience now they associate you with these knowables, this kind of values, and then you go in every direction you want. People make the mistake of trying to go in multiple directions before they've broken through the wall. And they're like, here's an arrow, here's an arrow, here's an arrow. So I think I have just an inherent advantage where I'm like, I don't have a zillion things that I want to talk about. This is my thing. I go all in on, and you were saying earlier about consistency and like what that's about. When I'm into something, I'm all in. Like I picked up beach volleyball in COVID and I'm like, I play 4 times a week now. I watch YouTube videos. I go to the open. I'm trying to learn everything and become the best at it. Competency is one of my values as well. So I think that it is, for me, just an inherent advantage where I'm like, I don't have a lot of other things that I want to talk about. It's this thing, it's this core belief. And when I'm on something, I'm on it. And so it's easy for me to just keep saying the same thing. I think the lesson from that, the business lesson and the business tactic from that is there's so much value in leaning into that and understanding, if we flip it, so it's not just about us, let's say, about understanding from your consumer that they need to hear this thing 1,000,000 times. One of the quotes that I borrow from this woman, Julie Angel, she has a PhD in parkour. How wild is that? She's 60-something years old. PhD in parkour. And in the parkour community, they say once is never. And I love that because like you land a trick, and if you only did it once, you basically never did it because maybe the conditions were just right, or it doesn't mean you own it. And the same thing can be said about when you're speaking about something, when you're talking about a lesson, you're teaching something. Once is never. No one heard it. No one understood it. Maybe you didn't even understand it. So there's so much value if your goal is to help people in saying this thing literally 11 billion times. And then you can go in whatever direction you want after that.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to borrow that. I love it
right?
so
It's
much.
not good.
And I need to just put the sticky note on my own desk. I'm calling myself out on that.
Just keep saying it. Keep saying, because your audience isn't bored of it. They haven't heard it. Like Ramit talks about it. I love Ramit. He talks about this. He sent the email again. No one fucking saw it. They did.
Right.
We think that they do. We think that someone's like watching our every move and they're like, oh, Emily sent an email out again about the same thing. No one saw it. Yeah. They are busy with their own lives. Like when we actually start teaching other people, especially when you go business to consumer, you see where the general population is at. If you're hanging out with other business owners, especially in the healthcare field, the movement space, you're like living at this level and you think everyone understands that. I'm in the nutrition space now. I don't really like it, but I'm in the nutrition space. I coach those people. But I personally don't teach nutrition. But when I watch nutrition coaches and they're speaking to the general population, I'm like, dude, you've been speaking to other professionals. Go watch Mean Girls. In one of the scenes, it's just, is butter a carb? That's where people are at. Yeah, that's where they're at. You need to back it up so much because people are like living their lives. They don't see that the one post that you did, they didn't understand it. They're probably scrolling their phone on their toilet at the end of the night with their kids' fingers like underneath the door, and they're like, leave me alone. They didn't see it. You have to say it again and again and again and again.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And then there's the whole thing about the reticular activating system and how like what our brain lets in. And so what we see versus what other people see. The newest client to join my high-level mastermind is actually my bookkeeper. And I hired her because she's the abundance bookkeeper. And so she does like all these wealth rituals over your money when she's like sending you reports. And I was like, yeah, I want somebody with the good juju, like working on my money. And she was like, I know there's more people like in this space and talking about this now. And I was like, hang on. Everyone else in the mastermind, can you just please tell her how often you're seeing people in your newsfeed talking about doing wealth rituals over your bookkeeping reports? And everyone's, nope.
Never in my life.
Yeah. Everyone listening to this podcast now can tag me and slide into my DMs and be like, never heard of that.
Never.
But it's like in her little tightly curated feed,
everyone's saying
what her brain is letting in. All of a sudden she thinks like it's everywhere.
And I'm like, no, it's not. That is social media. It makes you think things are so much more important and so much more common than they actually are. From a coaching perspective, when I work with people on Instagram coaching, I tell them to unfollow their peers. A lot of people follow people because they think they're supposed to. And I'm like, but are they bringing value to your life? Do you care? I do not follow anyone who I wouldn't hang out with in person. Yeah. Like obviously like a meme account, like I'm not hanging out with you, but they're just funny. Yeah. But like for an actual person, I'm like, I wouldn't hang out with you. Why am I following you? Get out of here. I see a lot of professionals following other professionals and I'm like, why? Yeah. you went to school together. Yes, the same thing. Yes, I hope you're talking about the same thing because you have the same education. But when people do that and they suddenly think exactly like what your bookkeeper said, like bookkeeper, accountant, both, what did you say? Bookkeeper. Like you think everyone's talking about it and it's actually no one's talking about it and definitely not your customer. So talk more and follow those people. Or mute.
Totally. Okay. I want to change the conversation to money because of course we got to get there. So let's do this backwards. So how much money do you make now?
That's a great question. And every time I have to send anything, I react to my accountant and I'm like, how much money did I make? Because I don't know. I actually don't track it like that. So I think the business pulled in maybe 250,000 last year. We're usually around there. I'm an S Corp, so I'll pay myself like around 70 or 80. I think it's whatever Sandy tells me to do.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I actually feel like that is a pretty precise answer because I do the same thing. I know exactly how much the business makes pretty roughly. But then the question of like how much I make from that gets a lot muddier because obviously we're trying to like write off things and have things be as a business expense rather than taking the money as a salary. And there is no just straight up easy answer to like how many dollars and cents went into my bank account. But that's okay. That means you're being strategic.
Yeah. It's also something I am not a super in the weeds person. I am a bean counter in that I pay my credit card every week. Like I pay it off. I actually love it. I'm like, you're not getting my money. I love it. It brings me joy to be able to pay that off. So, and then I keep like a running spreadsheet of that. But I've never been the person that's, I'm going to track every single expense and everything. I just know that I have enough. And so I've always had multiple bank accounts as well. So I'm a big fan of profit first system. I bastardized it a little bit. Well, I've always had multiple accounts because I was just like, I can just see there's enough in this. I just know, or is it going up or is it going down? Here's a base number that I want to have in this account to feel good. I'm not the person that's like in the spreadsheet. So when people are like, how much money are you making? I'm like, enough. I know that.
I'm good.
Exactly. Then I call Sandy and I'm like, I need to know I'm moving. How much money do I make?
Yeah, totally. I hear that. And I think that's true for a lot of us, like that can more easily access the big picture. Is this give me the trend, give me the cliff notes, and then I want somebody on my team that's making sure everything's detailed.
She's sending me spreadsheets and I'm like, can you get a graph in here? Sandy, there's a lot of numbers. Can I get a graph? That would help me out because that's not my thing. But God bless the people that love doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. So when it comes to money and like your relationship with it, do you feel like anything has changed over time? Did you have any like weird hangups around, I don't know if I can charge this or that kind of stuff?
I would say that there was, I think that one of the hangups was that if I charge higher, I'll get worse clients. Right? That I'll get like the people that are annoying because you see that in the physical therapy space where like you charge more, you might get the client that is expecting you to do everything for them. And you're like, but also no. So there was that kind of misconception there. I think something that I still think about is the fact that the 80-20 rule applies to business where you'll make the majority of your money from like a small subset of the people in your audience. And I'm like, why don't you buy something? I really like you. Let that person give me some money. I'll give it to you free. But they're like, and I get it. I'm not here to manage their experience. And they're like, no, but I want to give you money. And I'm like, I know, but I'd like for that person to give me some money instead of you. So there's definitely that piece where I'm like, you get the repeat clients and you're just like, I get it. You get to choose. Autonomy is sexy. You get to choose. Go ahead. I'm not going to say don't give me money, but that would be the thing that's like still something that's in my mind, if anything, as hang up.
In addition to that, I see, of course, all kinds of money wound stuff and money energetic things that are funky in people's businesses because that's why they come to me. But I'm just curious, has that ever been a thing for you that you dove into or been curious about? Have you noticed in your relationship with money where, I don't know, you were wanting to hoard it a little bit and not spend it? Or did you ever notice that it came in and it was gone as soon as it came because there was a fear around holding it? Anything that you were going on here?
I think that I want to say no, but here is the background with that because our experiences, that's where it comes from, our money psychology and our backgrounds with that. And so on the one hand, there's like a meme that always goes around and it's me to me, treat yourself. Me also to me. I've never denied myself anything ever. And I'm like, falls into that category for sure, where I'm just like, I have no problem spending on myself. But the flip side is that I grew up seeing and knowing what I need to do, like the value of money. Like I had to work for things and I had to work to get my cleats for soccer. It wasn't just like here. So I didn't grow up in this super affluent family or anything like that. I also saw that money provided options. So I watched my mom not have that. And I was like, I don't want that. I want to have options. And so I want to make money. But it didn't go where I need to make $1 million. There's been some balance in my brain for whatever reason where I was like, I want to make a lot of money, but not enough. I think that's the word. I want to make enough where I'm not super worried about things and that I can provide for my family, my siblings, if and when they need, because I see that money is options and I always want to have options. So there's not been like, oh, I had the money and then it's gone. I am, for whatever reason, like also terrified of going to jail. And I'm like, pay your taxes, everyone, because you're going to go to jail. Why is that a thing? I have no idea. No one went to jail that I know of. So I feel very fortunate in that with the money story side of things. I had sent the intake form beforehand. And I was like sitting there, do I have some stuff with that? I think the only thing that was a question was I hadn't seen someone make a significant amount of money. And so I was like, I'll figure that out and I'll have to go into debt to do that. But I think the flip side of that is that I was willing to do that. I'm willing to try and figure it out without seeing someone. Again, tying back to what we said earlier, because I look like this. And my whole life has been doing things without seeing someone who looks like me doing it. Right. I'm like, if I want it, I guess I got to go and figure that out. So
yeah,
that's largely been the money story there. So I would say if anything, any limiting belief, it'd be like the ceiling.
Yeah, this is just so fascinating to me because I've always suspected that men have this like very different approach to money, but I've always resonated more with working with women because that's been my experience. And so it's like where I want to impact. And we've talked about this a couple of times where it's like you, in the way that you grew up, maybe cherry picked a little bit more like which beliefs in the way that you were going to operate. And I just wonder if some of it as it related to money was like, I'm going to be like a man in a man's world when it comes to money.
100%. And no one told me I couldn't.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I think that someone would think that too, but then society's like, no, you can't. And then they're like, okay, I won't. But no one said that to me. There was no break put on it. And I was like, just go down that path then. I think 100%. 100%.
Yeah. Then even all the societal conditioning, like someone was talking to me about how in all the magazines where we'd be standing in the checkout lane as kids and all the magazines are there. And for the women, it would be like about clipping coupons and like saving money. And then for the men, it was like how to invest it, how to have your money make money.
Totally different.
Yeah. And you were like, I don't resonate with that lady who's clipping coupons.
That's not me. That's not me. I don't want that. You nailed it. 100%. You nailed it.
Oh, so that's so fascinating.
100%. And I was really excited to come on this podcast because I knew we'd have discussions like this. Yeah. And I don't get to talk about things in this way, just in a lot of other podcasts.
This isn't what you talk about on every health and wellness.
No. A lot of people ask about Instagram and I'm like, okay, we can talk about Instagram again.
Fine. Meta some more money.
Let's say we could talk about that. But I was excited about this. I was like, I know we'll go into the more and deeper and get to, because these are things that I've thought about.
Yeah.
I am the person that as a kid, just remember always asking myself, why do I do these things? Why do I think this? Why do I feel this way? Just that was how my brain worked. And like, so some of the things that I speak about now, people are like, how are you so convicted in it? I'm like, because I've been thinking about it for 38 years. Oh, I know.
Yeah. And my favorite thing about being a podcast host is like to find out with people that I like psychoanalyze them a little bit. Yeah. Like, I want to get you on the show so I can ask you, like, what do you think about this stuff?
That's why we have podcasts.
100%. It's very self-serving.
Of course. 100%. That's how to do it. And then everyone else can listen in if they want. But I'm like, but I got my questions answered.
Absolutely. So for everyone that wants to connect with you, where are you hanging out online?
Instagram is the easiest, but my handle will be the same across all the platforms. This is the Movement Maestro. Maestro is spelled Maestro. Website is the same. I'm over on Threads now too. That's fun, but it's all the same. The Movement Maestro. You DM me. I'm happy to get back to you. I love chatting.
Amazing. Anything else that you want to share with the audience before we call it?
I think that's it. I've said a lot. I talk a lot. Just thank you to you for inviting me on and giving me space and having such great questions and great conversation. I appreciate you.
Yeah, it was like an old friend convo. So now I'm going to have to invite you up to PV and you can see my 6 and we'll hang in person.
I'm jealous. I'm like, where's my invite? Come on.
Oh, it's coming. Thank you so much for being on the show. To everyone listening, thanks for tuning in. Okay, how great was that? So make sure that you give Shanté a follow at the Movement Maestro. Here are my top takeaways. Number 1, figure out what you love and find more ways to do that in your business. Number 2, create competitive barriers in your business through owning your unique genius, aka niching. This is not the old way of doing things where we have to be hyper competitive. It's more about owning what makes you unique and making it so recognizable that, as she said, it's giving your people something to say yes to. Number 3, once is never. Oh my gosh, you guys, I loved that quote so much. We need to be talking about our thing and then talking about it some more and then some more and then some more. Number 4, frequency and consistency are not the same thing. You can be consistent and have a very different level of frequency than every day showing up in your business. And I've been talking to my clients a lot about devotion and dedication and just like being more in the frequency of love and caring for your business. And that's why you show up rather than it being an obligation or something that you should do in order to make sales. And lastly, number 5, when you choose to opt out of the societal conditioning around money and gender roles, your money story cleans up really fast. And that was so fascinating to witness. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you loved this episode as much as I did. As always, when you slide into the DMs, or better yet, when you screenshot it and tag me and Shanté, like it just makes our days. And we so appreciate knowing that there's listeners out there that love the show as much as I do / we do. So thank you for being here, and I will talk to you soon.
Listeners like you have made this a top 3% global podcast. So thank you so much for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, share, and leave a review. I also love hearing listener feedback, so feel free to slide into my DMs on Instagram at mmakesmoney. If you would like to explore hiring me as your money healer and business mentor, hit the link in the show notes or head to explore.emilywilcox.com. Until next time, I'm sending you all the magic money vibes on your joyous path to millions.